Imagine this. It's a Tuesday. The sun is high in the sky, streaming through the gaps in your curtains. You reach for your phone, your eyes stinging from the blue light, and you see it. 2:14 p.m. Your heart sinks. You didn't just oversleep, you've practically missed the day. Your notifications are a graveyard of missed opportunities. Emails you haven't answered, a gym session you skipped, and that to-do list you wrote last night, it's staring at you from the bedside table, mocking you. You feel that heavy, cold weight in your chest. It's not just tiredness, it's guilt. You feel like the world is sprinting ahead. Your friends are at work, your rivals are smashing their goals, and you're just stuck. You tell yourself, I'm just lazy. I'll never get around to changing. But what if I told you that the crushing weight you feel isn't because you're a failure? What if the problem isn't you, but the way you've been taught to change? Hello, and a very warm welcome to the English Way Up podcast. I'm your host, Sarah, and I am absolutely delighted to have you with us today. Whether you're listening during your morning commute in London, grabbing a coffee in Sao Paulo, or perhaps winding down after a long day in Tokyo or Amsterdam, welcome to the fold. Today, we are tackling something that affects every single one of us, the struggle to build habits. We often think we need more willpower, more grit, or that we need to burn the midnight oil just to keep up. But today, we're flipping the script. We're talking about effortless change. Joining me is a man who truly knows the dark side of procrastination. He was once a self-proclaimed chronic slacker who managed to turn his life around and is now a world-class productivity coach. Mike, it is a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks so much for having me, Sarah. It's funny hearing you describe that 2 p.m. wake-up call, because honestly, that was my entire life for about 5 years. I know that guilt inside out.
It's a universal feeling, isn't it? That sense of falling behind before you've even put your shoes on.
Absolutely. And for our listeners learning English, it's the same thing. You plan to study for 2 hours, you don't do it, and then the guilt makes you want to give up entirely. Today, I want to show everyone why willpower is actually a bit of a lie.
That's a bold claim, Mike. We're told from a young age that if we don't succeed, it's because we didn't want it enough. We're told we lack backbone. But you're saying laziness isn't a character flaw.
Exactly. Here's the thing. Laziness is usually just a symptom. It's a side effect of a system failure. Think about it this way. If you try to run a marathon in flip-flops and you stop after 1 mile because your feet hurt, are you lazy? No, your equipment was wrong. Most people try to build habits using only willpower, but willpower is like a phone battery. It drains throughout the day. By the time you get home from work, your battery is at 5%. You're not lazy, you're just out of juice.
I totally get that. I find that if I have a stressful morning at the studio, by the time I get home, the last thing I want to do is practice my Spanish or go for a run. I just want to sit on the sofa and, well, disappear into the internet.
Right, and then the guilt cycle kicks in. You feel bad because you didn't do the thing, so your brain looks for a way to feel better. And how does the brain feel better quickly? Usually through cheap dopamine, scrolling through social media, eating junk food, or watching YouTube.
So the guilt actually fuels the procrastination?
Precisely. You're stuck in a loop. You feel like a failure, so you act like a failure. To get back on track, we have to stop blaming our personality and start looking at our systems. We need to make the right choice, the easy choice.
That's a fascinating perspective. It takes the shame out of the equation. If it's a system error, we can fix it. We don't need a personality transplant. We just need a better manual. Now, Mike, you mentioned something earlier when we were chatting off air about identity. In the English learning world, we often hear students say, I want to speak English fluently. but you suggest we should phrase our goals differently.
This is the secret sauce, Sarah. Most people focus on the outcome. I want to lose 10 kilos, or I want to reach C1 level in English. The problem is, as long as you focus on the goal, your brain thinks you aren't there yet. You're always a person who is trying to be something. Instead, you need to shift your identity first.
Give us an example. How does that sound in practice?
Okay, so instead of saying, I am trying to learn English, you start saying, I am a communicator. Or instead of, I want to write a book, you say, I am a writer. When you identify as a writer, you don't ask yourself, do I have enough willpower to write today? You just think, what does a writer do? A writer writes. It sounds like a small linguistic trick, but it changes how your brain perceives the task.
That is brilliant. It reminds me of a friend of mine. He wanted to get fit, but he hated the gym. He started telling everyone, I'm becoming an outdoorsman. Suddenly, he wasn't forcing himself to hike. He was just doing what outdoorsmen do.
Exactly. When you shift your identity, the habit becomes an expression of who you are, not a chore you have to complete. For our listeners, don't just study English. Be a global citizen. Be an English speaker. Even if you only know 10 words, use them with the pride of someone who is a speaker of the language.
I love that. I'm not a student, I'm a speaker. It takes the pressure off getting it right and puts the focus on being it. Let's move on to something more physical. You talk a lot about making habits lazy-proof. I love that term. As someone who can be quite lazy myself on a Sunday afternoon, how do I set up my life so that I don't have to rely on my disappearing willpower?
This is what I call environment design. We like to think we are in control of our choices, but usually we are just reacting to our environment. If you walk into your kitchen and there's a plate of cookies on the counter, you're probably going to eat one. Not because you're hungry, but because it's there.
I am definitely guilty of that. If it's in my sight, it's in my stomach.
We all are. So to build effortless habits, you have to curate your space. If you want to practice English every morning, don't leave your textbook hidden in a drawer. Put it on your pillow the night before. Or even better, change your phone's display language to English.
Ah, the language immersion trick.
Right, you're making it harder to not see English. If you want to go running in the morning, put your running shoes and clothes right next to your bed, so when you wake up, you practically trip over them. You're reducing the friction between you and the habit.
So essentially, we want to make the good habits require the least amount of effort, and the bad habits require the most.
Spot on. If you find yourself scrolling through your phone for hours, put your phone in another room. Make yourself walk 20 steps to get it. That small amount of friction is often enough to make your lazy brain say, it's not worth the effort. You've used your laziness to beat your laziness.
That is pure genius. Using your own natural tendency to avoid effort as a shield against bad habits. We've talked about identity and our environment, but what about when a task just feels overwhelming? You know, that mountain of work that makes you want to crawl back under the duvet?
That's where the 2-minute rule comes in. This is a game changer, especially for language learners who feel they need to study for hours to make progress. The rule is simple. When you start a new habit, it should take less than 2 minutes to do.
2 minutes? But Mike, surely you can't learn a language or get fit in 2 minutes a day.
You're right, you can't, but you can start the habit. The hardest part of any task is starting. Once you start, the friction disappears. So, study English for an hour becomes read one news headline in English. Go for a 5-mile run becomes put on my running shoes and walk out the front door. Clean the whole house becomes wash one bowl.
So the goal isn't to finish the task, it's simply to show up.
Precisely. You have to standardize before you can optimize. You can't improve a habit that doesn't exist. If you can just get into the rhythm of showing up for 2 minutes every day, you've won the biggest battle.
I suppose it's like a plane taking off. It uses the most fuel just getting off the ground. Once it's in the air, cruising is easy.
I love that analogy. Most people try to jump straight to cruising altitude without building a runway. The 2-minute rule is your runway.
This is incredibly insightful, Mike. We've covered the guilt cycle, the identity shift, and how to lazy-proof our environment. I can already feel my own mindset shifting. But I want to dig deeper into how we can stay back on track when life inevitably gets in the way. Because let's be honest, even with the best systems, we all have those days where everything goes wrong.
Oh, absolutely. The perfect streak is a myth that kills more habits than anything else.
We'll dive into that in just a moment. To our lovely listeners, how are you feeling so far? Does that 2 p.m. guilt sound familiar to you? We'd love to hear your stories. If you're enjoying this conversation and want to take your English to the next level while improving your life, do make sure to hit that subscribe button for English Way Up. It really helps us reach more learners around the globe. Would you like me to continue with Chapter 5, where we discuss the power of small wins and overcoming the all-or-nothing mindset? We're back. Now, Mike, before the break, we touched on the idea of the perfect streak. I think many of our listeners, especially those trying to master English, suffer from what I call the all-or-nothing trap. It's that feeling where if you can't study for an hour, or if you make a mistake in a conversation, you feel like the whole day is a write-off. You've fallen behind, so why bother, right?
The all-or-nothing mindset is the ultimate habit killer. It's like popping a tire on your car and then getting out and slashing the other 3 because, well, the car's broken anyway. It makes no sense, but we do it to our habits every day.
That's a brilliant image. I missed my morning vocabulary session, so I might as well spend the rest of the day watching reality TV. It's a very human reaction, but it's so destructive.
It really is. The antidote to this is celebrating small wins. In the productivity world, we often talk about 1% gains. If you get 1% better every day, you don't just get 365% better in a year. Because of compounding, you actually end up 37 times better.
That's a staggering statistic, but 1% feels so insignificant. How do we convince our brains that a 5-minute English podcast or a 2-minute stretch actually matters?
You have to change what you're measuring. Don't measure the result yet. Measure the showing up. I tell my clients, never miss twice. Missing 1 day is an accident. Missing 2 days is the start of a new habit, a habit of not doing it. So if you're exhausted and you can't do your full English lesson, just do 1 minute, read 1 tweet, watch 1 English Way Up short. That keeps the identity alive. You're telling your brain, I'm still the kind of person who does this.
I love that. Never miss twice. It allows for life to happen. Because let's be honest, things get in the way. You might have a late meeting or your child might get sick.
Exactly. Perfection is the enemy of consistency. When you celebrate a small win, like learning just 1 new phrasal verb today, your brain releases a tiny bit of dopamine. That dopamine makes you want to do it again tomorrow. If you focus on how much you haven't done, you get cortisol, the stress hormone, which makes you want to hide and procrastinate.
So it's actually more productive to be kind to yourself.
Paradoxically, yes. Self-compassion is the fuel for long-term change. If you treat yourself like a strict, mean boss, you're eventually going to want to quit that job. If you treat yourself like a supportive coach, you'll stay in the game.
Let's talk about another practical tool. I've heard you talk about habit stacking. For our learners who are struggling to find time in their busy schedules, how can they set up a routine that doesn't feel like adding more work to their day?
This is probably the most effective way to build a new habit without feeling any struggle. Habit stacking is when you take a new habit and anchor it to something you already do every single day. Think about your day. You have anchor habits you don't even think about: brushing your teeth, making coffee, checking your phone, or sitting down for dinner.
Right. I don't need willpower to brush my teeth. I just do it.
Exactly. So you use the formula: after current habit, I will new habit. For example, after I press the button on the coffee machine, I will learn 3 new English words. Or after I put my seatbelt on in the car, I will turn on an English podcast.
So you're essentially hitching a ride on a habit that already exists.
Precisely. You're not trying to create a new slot in your brain. You're just extending an existing one. The trigger is already there. You don't have to remember to do it because the coffee machine reminds you.
That's incredibly helpful for language learning. I often suggest to my students that they listen to English while they're doing the mindless tasks, like washing the dishes or commuting. It makes the effortless change we're talking about feel very real.
And it removes the decision-making process. Decision fatigue is real, Sarah. The more choices you have to make, should I study now or after lunch or tonight, the more likely you are to say, I'll get around to it tomorrow. With habit stacking, the decision is already made.
We've talked a lot about the individual, but what about the people around us? We have listeners from all over the world today: Brazil, the Netherlands, France. Does it help to have a tribe?
Oh, massively. We are social creatures. We subconsciously mirror the habits of the people we spend time with. If your inner circle spends all their time complaining and procrastinating, it's going to be very hard for you to be the one person who is focused and positive.
It's that old saying, isn't it? You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
It's a cliche because it's true. But here's the good news for 2026. Your 5 people don't have to live in your house. They can be the voices in your ears. By listening to podcasts like this or joining an online community of learners, you are stacking the deck in your favor. You're surrounding yourself with people who value growth.
I think that's why our English Way Up community is so special. People are supporting each other from different time zones. It makes the world feel smaller and the goals feel more achievable.
When you know someone else is out there, maybe someone in Sao Paulo is struggling with the same phrasal verb as you are in Tokyo, it makes you feel less alone. Accountability doesn't have to be a scary thing. It can just be the feeling of we're all in this together.
Mike, we've covered an incredible amount of ground today. We've looked at the 2-minute rule, identity shifts, environment design, and the never miss twice rule. If someone is listening to this right now, feeling that 2 p.m. guilt we started with, what is the very first thing they should do?
Step 1. Forgive yourself. Seriously, the guilt is the heaviest thing you're carrying. Drop it. Step 2. Pick one tiny thing. Not a big thing, just one. If you want to improve your English, don't buy a 500-page grammar book today. Just commit to listening to 5 minutes of English tomorrow morning while you brush your teeth. That's it.
Start small, stay consistent.
Exactly. Don't try to change your whole life in 24 hours. Just try to win the next 2 minutes.
Mike, thank you so much for joining us. This has been an absolute masterclass in human behavior, and frankly, a much-needed wake-up call for myself as well.
My pleasure, Sarah. To everyone listening, you've got this, just one step at a time.
And to you, our global family of learners, thank you for spending your time with us today. Remember, change doesn't have to be a struggle. It can be a series of small, effortless shifts that lead you to a completely different destination. If you found today's episode helpful, please do share it with a friend who might be feeling a bit stuck. And don't forget to subscribe to English Way Up for more stories, more insights, and more ways to elevate your English. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep moving way up. I'm Sarah, and I'll catch you in the next episode. Cheers! We've built the foundation, Mike. We have the identity of a communicator, a lazy-proof environment, and the 2-minute rule. Now, let's get practical for our global community. How does an English learner apply all of this to master the language without feeling like they're back in a boring school classroom?
This is my favorite part, Sarah, because learning a language is the ultimate habit mountain. Most people fail because they try to climb it all at once. To make it effortless, we need to set up what I call passive immersion.
I love that term. It sounds like learning while you're sleeping.
Well, not quite while you're sleeping, but close. The goal is to make English the background noise of your life. Think about the environment design we discussed. If you have to decide to study, you've already lost. Instead, create English zones in your house. For example, the bathroom mirror is your vocabulary zone. Stick 3 Post-it notes there with new idioms. While you're brushing your teeth, which is your anchor habit, you simply look at them. No extra time required.
Right. And since you're already there for 2 minutes, it fits the 2-minute rule perfectly.
Exactly. And for listening, don't wait until you have a quiet hour. You won't find one. Use your dead time, the time you spent commuting, cleaning, or waiting in line at the supermarket. If you're a B2 learner, listen to podcasts like English Way Up at 1x speed. If you're feeling confident, try 1.2x.
And what about speaking? That's where the most friction happens. People are terrified of making mistakes.
This goes back to identity. A student is afraid of being wrong. A communicator just wants to be understood. Try the self-talk habit. After you finish your morning coffee, spend 60 seconds describing your day out loud in English, just to yourself. I am going to the office, then I have a meeting at 10. It's low stakes, zero pressure, and it builds the muscle memory of speaking.
There's a point in every journey, usually a few months in, where the initial excitement wears off. We call it the intermediate plateau. You feel like you're working hard, but you're not getting better. How do we prevent ourselves from falling behind mentally when this happens?
The plateau is actually a sign of progress, though it doesn't feel like it. It means your brain has automated the basics and is now reorganizing for the complex stuff. When you hit the plateau, stop looking at the mountain peak. Look back at how far you've climbed. This is why I suggest keeping a win journal.
A win journal? Tell me more.
Every night before you go to bed, write down one tiny English win. Maybe you understood a joke in a movie. Maybe you remembered the phrasal verb get around to without checking a dictionary. Or maybe you just showed up and listened to this podcast when you felt tired.
I suppose that helps back on track those positive neural pathways?
Precisely. It shifts your focus from what I don't know to what I have mastered. Remember, motivation doesn't lead to action. Action leads to motivation. You do the small task, you feel the win, and that gives you the energy to keep going.
As we approach the end of our conversation, I want to talk about the heart of the matter. We've talked about systems and rules, but habits need a why. To our listeners in Brazil, the Netherlands, and Japan, why are you doing this? Is it for a better job? To travel the world? Or maybe to prove to yourself that you can?
That why is your anchor when the sea gets rough. For me, I wanted to stop being the guy who had potential but never did anything. I was tired of feeling like a spectator in my own life.
That's a powerful thought. The spectator of your own life. I think many people feel that way when they procrastinate. They see their dreams through a window, but they never open the door.
If you're listening to this, you've already opened the door. By choosing to spend 40 minutes with us, you've proven that you are a growth-minded person. That is your new identity. Protect it.
Mike, I cannot thank you enough for these insights. You've turned productivity from a scary, rigid word into something that feels, well, effortless.
It's been a pleasure, Sarah. And remember, everyone, be kind to yourselves. You're doing better than you think.
And to you, our incredible English Way Up family. If you're listening to this while the sun is coming up, or perhaps as you're about to go to sleep, know that every minute you spend here is an investment in your future self. Don't let the guilt of the past stop you from winning the next 2 minutes. You are not lazy. You are just a person building a better system, and we are here to build it with you. If this episode resonated with you, please leave us a comment. Tell us, what is your 2-minute habit going to be tomorrow? We read every single one of your messages, and they truly inspire us to keep creating. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode. Let's keep moving forward, together. I'm Sarah, this is English Way Up, and as always, elevate your mind and master your English. Good night or good morning, wherever you are. Cheers.